The Sacramento Kings are going to the Summer League championship game. Isaac Jones, take a bow. 36 points in the playoffs. I guess we can call him Playoffs Isaac. Meanwhile, some other Kings do struggle, but we'll break down the Kings win over the number 1 seed Toronto Raptors right here on Locked On Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily Sacramento Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time for another episode of Locked On Kings.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Kings, your podcast hub for Sacramento Kings coverage all off-season long. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off of your first purchase. My name is Matt George. I have the privilege of being your host here. I'm a Sacramento sports anchor and reporter for ABC 10 News, and I don't care about the context. It's just fun to say that the Sacramento Kings are going to the championship game. Summer League, the Kings have won the Summer League title 2 times. They're one of 2 franchises who have ever won the Summer League title multiple times. It's the Kings and the Portland Trail Blazers. And if the Kings win tomorrow night, they will be the only team with 3 Summer League rings. The seeding system for the Summer League is based off of record and then point differential. The Toronto Raptors were the number 1 seed because not only did they go 4-0 during the regular Summer League season, I guess you could call it, they blew out their opponents pretty consistently. And when we saw them pick up the defensive intensity, especially full court and on the perimeter, you can see why the Raptors have had so much success this summer. But man, these Sacramento Kings, I think the deepest team in the Summer League, they showed that off because while the guys who have been successful all Summer League long, mainly Nique Clifford, did struggle in this game. You have Isaac Jones, who has had a really solid Summer League to this point, but he explodes. He steps up. He looks like the second-year NBA player, the veteran of this Summer League roster that the Kings needed to lean on when this game got messy. Isaac Jones was phenomenal from start to finish in this game, but really helped the Kings put this game away in the fourth quarter when it looked like they were going to completely lose it and fall apart. 36 points, 13 of 17 from the field, 9 of 11 from the free throw line, and also 6 rebounds. There's a spot on the floor known as the dunker spot. There's typically 2 of them, although I guess you could say 3. It's essentially around that restricted area circle, a little bit beyond that. We're talking the edge of the paint to slightly outside the paint, and typically the main dunker spots are at the angle, not straight onto the basket, but out at the angle. And the theory or the term is like if you get the ball to someone in the dunker spot, they don't have to waste any time. They just rise up and throw it down. That dunker spot is Isaac Jones territory. That is where that man lives. He has lived there all Summer League long, and there was not a player on either team that was going to get him off of that spot. Now, Isaac Jones has also been working on his three-point shot, mainly that corner 3, and I do believe he hit a corner 3 in this game. But Isaac Jones lives at that dunker spot around that rim. The Kings have done a really good job all Summer League finding him in that spot. And as good and physical as the Raptors defense was, and it affected a lot of Sacramento Kings players in this game, they could not get Isaac Jones off that spot. They couldn't do it. They could not move that man. When he got to that spot, all the ball had to do was find him. And it was going up, it was going in. They tried to foul him. That didn't work. The amount of physical and ones and 3-point plays that Isaac Jones converted in this game was phenomenal. In fact, we're going to break it down here in a second, but there was an and one that essentially ended the Raptors' comeback hopes late in the fourth quarter. But I had some highlights that I had posted of Isaac on Twitter, and I posted his amazing stat line from this game on Twitter. And there was a comment from a Kings fan that intrigued me. The comment was, Isaac Jones can be the Sacramento Kings' Aaron Gordon. Now, I'm not saying that Isaac Jones is as good of a player as Aaron Gordon is. Aaron Gordon, a championship player, one of the best players on that Denver Nuggets team. Isaac Jones is a two-way player that was converted to a main roster spot just last year because he was so important and the Kings needed him for beyond that 50-game maximum to the two-way contract. But the type of player that Aaron Gordon is, and the type of player that he was specifically and has been specifically for Denver, is kind of the type of player that Isaac Jones wants to be and is looking to be and was during this summer league for the Kings. Now, if Jones could develop his corner three-point shot to up to the level of Aaron Gordon, then now we're talking the gap between the two players isn't as big as I'm suggesting here. The three-point shot for Isaac Jones needs a lot of work. But can Isaac be that when he's on the floor, he's that enforcer, he plays physical down low on both ends of the floor, and he is going to aggressively look to attack the rim, especially when he can get to that dunker spot. I could see it as a role for Isaac to play in Sacramento in the limited time that he's going to be on the floor. And I say limited because as good as Isaac Jones has been, I don't know if he's going to be a guy to crack the rotation right away consistently. I think he's a guy that Doug Christie can always point to and go to and have on his bench that is valuable for a coach to have. But unless the Sacramento Kings are, one, either planning on playing small with a 9-man rotation, or two, planning on having a 10-man rotation, as of now, I don't see how Isaac Jones will be a nightly contributor to the Kings at this point. Not saying he's not capable of being that. I'm just assessing that based off of the construction of the Kings roster going into training camp. But when he's on the floor, Isaac Jones is valuable. He's proven that value going back to last season. But down the stretch, the Sacramento Kings as a whole righted the ship at just the right time, right? They were up big a couple of times in this game. They had a double-digit lead early on, led by over 20 points in the second half after a dominant third quarter, and looked like, okay, they were not necessarily going to cruise, but they were well on their way to punching their ticket. Credit to the Toronto Raptors, man. They fought hard. They were scrappy. Their full court pressure was brilliant, and that full court pressure is something that Doug Christie's a big fan of. I remember working with Doug in radio at Sacktown Sports 1140, and Doug talked about the value of full court pressure and how if things aren't going your way, if you're on the wrong side of a run, if you just need to spark some energy, picking up the pressure full court, even if it doesn't result in a lot of steals and turnovers, but just making life more difficult for the ball handlers, letting the point guard know he's going to have to work just to get the ball across the mid-court line. Like that was, Doug Christie used to talk about that all the time. So I imagine a lot of what the Toronto Raptors did in their full court press is something that Doug Christie would like to implement for the main team next season. But the Kings were crumbling, like completely falling apart. They were turning the ball over left and right. They couldn't get anything going. Their guards were getting absolutely harassed on the perimeter, and Sacramento couldn't do anything about it. The Raptors hit a three and cut the Kings' lead down to 1. It was 81-80, I believe was the score. And the Kings go back down the other way. Nique Clifford has the ball on the perimeter, once again getting harassed. Swings the ball over to Maxime Reynaud in the corner. Max pump fakes, then drives, attacks the basket, strong two-handed jam to get some of the momentum back on the side of the Kings. He had another floater in the lane like a minute or two earlier than that also, I wouldn't say stopped, but at least put a dent into the Raptors' run. But Maxime, a really, really good Pump fake on the perimeter, gets his defender up in the air, attacks the basket. Big dunk to kind of stop the bleeding. Kings go down the other end of the floor. They get a defensive stop. Back down on offense. Nique Clifford, again, ball in his hands, now working on the near side of the basket, towards the corner, near side on the camera side if we're watching on television. And he attacks, is looking for space, gets cut off, finds Isaac Jones around that dunker spot, and Isaac attacks the basket, is fouled, big and one, three-point play opportunity. The Raptors never recovered from that point. Again, the Kings had their lead cut down 81-80, just a 1-point lead. They finished the game on that from that point on a 17-8 run to close this one out. It's good to see the Kings handle pressure in that way. I don't think it's a coincidence that Nique Clifford, who did struggle in this game, we'll talk about Nique's struggles, Maxime's struggles, Devin Carter's struggles, that's all coming in the next segment. But the two big plays down the stretch to help the Kings put that Raptors run to an end, regain control. And what I liked after that Isaac Jones and one is he did this hand motion. I don't know if it was to his teammates or to the crowd or to the Raptors or whoever, but just this calm down, I got this, settle down. But Nique was the one that at least initiated those plays. I'm not going to try and give him more credit than he deserves, but the ball ran through him. He found Maxime for the big pump fake dunk, found Isaac Jones for the and one. I like that the ball was moving through Nique Clifford there down the stretch. But like I said, we got to talk about Nique's struggles. We'll talk about the struggles of Devin Carter, Maxime Reynaud. I also want to talk about the two-way contract spot for the Sacramento Kings and how much success they've had at that spot. That's all still coming here on Locked On Kings. Like I said at the top of the show, today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is brought to you by Game Time. We've all been there logging on early and waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show that you've been dying to see if your just refresh button wasn't fast enough. Live music should be about making memories, not dealing with the stress of getting a ticket and getting in. That's where Game Time comes in. Game Time makes getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever. Prices actually drop as it gets closer to the show, so you can save up to 60% off with killer last-minute deals. If you're tired of endlessly scrolling through tickets that might be available that are overpriced on the secondary market and trying to find something that fits your price range, but that's also not in the nosebleeds, and have a good idea of what the view of the stage or the court or the field is going to be from your seat, Game Time checks all of those boxes. Plus, if you're worried about what happens if you get tickets, make that investment, and then plans change, life events happen, the Game Time guarantee has your back with cancellation protection and even more on top of that. Take the guesswork out of buying concert, show tickets, athletic tickets, whatever it is, with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. The Kings got the win 98-88. They're going to the Summer League championship, but there were some individual struggles in this game, primarily from their guards. And the first person that everybody's going to look to is Devin Carter. Devin in this game, 8 points, 3 of 10 from the field, 0 of 6 from three-point range, 6 assists, 2 steals, 2 turnovers. This was not a good game for Devin Carter. Make no mistake about it. It was a bad scoring game for Devin Carter. But I make sure to put that emphasis on scoring because just because you're not scoring doesn't mean you didn't have a good or at least impactful offensive game. Because I saw a lot of people talking about Carter on social media. Oh man, terrible game. Carter can't handle the point guard position. He was awful all game long. I disagree. Devin Carter had 6 assists in this game. A couple of them really, really nice assists, whether he was looking up in transition. He found Isaac Jones at the dunker spot a couple of times, had a really nice dime to Isaac Jones in the fourth quarter. I felt that Devin Carter, despite struggling so mightily offensively or scoring-wise, struggling so mightily to hit a three. He missed a lot of wide-open threes, missed a lot of free throws too. I thought he still managed to positively impact the game by those 6 assists. He turned the ball over twice. People were making it out to be like he turned the ball over 4 or 5 times. He didn't. Now, one of his turnovers at the end of the game came, like, it's just one of those turnovers that can't happen, where he was trying to attack. The Raptors were harassing him on the ball, and he just threw the ball out of bounds, essentially. I don't know what he was doing. It was a bad turnover. And he'll be the first one to say it was a bad turnover. But I don't like any narrative that's painting out Devin Carter's game to be bad and useless, and he shouldn't have been on the floor, and he had a bad scoring game, so he didn't impact this win at all. That's just not true. Defensively, he also had some good moments as well. He also had a really strong take going coast to coast, kind of showing off the strength, and I also think there was a lot of frustration with it, of going coast to coast to end the first half with a bucket there. Again, I'm not trying to put lipstick on a pig. I'm not trying to sell you on a used, broken down car. Devin Carter did not have a good game. And all summer league long, Devin has struggled when the on-ball pressure has picked up. So here is the difference in my mind, right? Here is where I can acknowledge one thing while also acknowledging the other. Like I said, I thought Devin Carter had some solid moments in this game and did contribute positively to the Kings ultimately winning this game. My concern with Devin Carter from this game is not that he had a bad shooting performance, because if Devin Carter's hitting threes, that's great, but I don't expect that to be his role with the Kings by any means. Being a scoring guard off the bench is not going to be what Devin Carter does at the NBA level, at least here in Sacramento. The role that he is trying to handle is a backup point guard position. That is his route to a rotational spot in Sacramento, at least right now. And he didn't do a lot in a very meaningful game against a lot of ball pressure down the stretch in a close game to build the confidence that he can handle that position. Now, at the NBA level, the defense is going to be better. Maybe not as intense for 40 minutes as the Raptors were playing, but if the game is close in a meaningful game, whoever is guarding the ball is going to play with a little more intensity. It's not like just 5 James Hardens out there just ball watching. The defense is going to be better. The athleticism is going to be better at the NBA level. Now, Devin Carter's probably not going to be on the floor running the point at the end of a game, because he's the backup point guard, not the starting point guard. But God forbid something happens to Dennis Schroeder, or Dennis Schroeder and Malik Monk are in foul trouble. That did not give me, and I'm sure it didn't give Scott Perry, a whole lot of confidence in his ability to hold down the offensive side of that position. Like Perry said in an interview, like Game 3 of Summer League, he believes that Devin can hold down the position from a defensive standpoint. But offensively, can he handle those big moments as that primary initiator? And there were a lot of times where the ball was handed off to Nique Clifford. There were a lot of times when the ball was handed off to Isaiah Stevens down the stretch in a couple of these Summer League games. So we can acknowledge that. And the Kings are, of course, paying attention to that. But we don't have to make a mountain out of a molehill. We don't have to go to a level of extreme of Devin Carter's awful at basketball. He's not an NBA player. I saw some of that. I just think that's silly overreaction. You're certainly not going to hear me saying that here on Locked On Kings. Nique Clifford had his worst game by far so far in Summer League. Now, the biggest difference between these games and earlier Summer League, other than the fact that this is playoffs and they're playing for something at this point, the foul situation. In regular Summer League, you have, I think, 10 fouls that you can have before you foul out of the game. So you can play kind of free. It gets scrappy. Fouls are going to happen, whatever. Getting in foul trouble with 10 fouls isn't really a thing. But once they get to the playoffs, the semifinals and the championship game, they go basically to NBA rules. You have 6 fouls. And Nique Clifford got into foul trouble early on. He opened up the game. I think he scored like the second basket of the game for the Kings, a really nice baseline jumper. So it looked like, okay, here comes Nique. He's going to get involved. I thought the Raptors defensively did a fantastic job playing him physically and not giving him a lot of space. Nique got into foul trouble on both the offensive and defensive end, picked up 3 fouls very quickly in this game, had to sit a lot of the first half, picked up his 4th foul pretty early on in the third quarter, had to sit a decent chunk of the third quarter. Nique Clifford couldn't really get a rhythm in this game because of the foul trouble. He finished with 7 points, 3 of 8 shooting from the field. Did fill up the stat column in other ways, though, which is what we love about Nique. 5 rebounds, 3 assists, 1 steal, and 1 block. But again, I want to make sure we emphasize that those moments that I laid out, those 2 big buckets in the fourth quarter that helped effectively end the Raptors' run and put the Kings back on top and allow them to close this game out, both those plays began with Nique Clifford controlling the basketball and setting up his teammates. That, to me, is encouraging. It doesn't forgive the struggles that he had, but that is encouraging from the rookie. Then there's Maxime Reynaud, who also struggled in this game at times. 12 points, 6 of 12 from the field, 7 rebounds, 1 assist. I'm not the biggest fan of plus-minus, but I think this is worth acknowledging, not to overreact to, but just something that caught my attention. Of all the Kings starters, Maxime Reynaud was the only one with a negative plus-minus, meaning when he was on the floor, ultimately the Kings were outscored. It was only like -4 or something like that, so it wasn't egregious or anything. But I did think it was interesting that down the stretch, as this game got physical and the physicality kept picking up, the Kings elected to play Isaac Jones at the center position over Maxime Reynaud at times. Or offensively, they would have Maxime Reynaud on the perimeter and Isaac Jones down low. Now, thankfully, Maxime Reynaud is a 7'1" player that can shoot the basketball. I thought all game long, his movement on the perimeter was really solid. He does a great job of finding the open space and keeping that spacing so that guys like Isaac Jones can live at that dunker spot and not get harassed and double or triple teamed every time the Kings look to get him the ball down there, right? And what that made me think of is, okay, take Isaac Jones out. Put Domantas Sabonis in. In theory, it works. In theory, okay, Domantas Sabonis is the guy that's down there on the block or in the high post, that's pushing and shoving and fighting, not necessarily looking to score as much as Isaac Jones was looking to score in this game. But Maxime Reynaud can work because he's able to space the floor. And if Isaac Jones wasn't seeing or was seeing some double teams at the end of this game, imagine, of course, the attention that Domantas Sabonis gets when he tries to score or gets position down on the low post or around the rim. Teams collapse on him. Maxime Reynaud is going to be able to get those looks. And I'm not talking about long stretches of Maxime and Domas playing together. I don't think that's going to happen. But I can see at the NBA level stretch minutes where the Kings need to go bigger or need to make sure their rebounding is on par or whatever, that Sabonis and Reynaud can share the floor together, and offensively the spacing is there, and it's a lot more effective than when Sabonis and Valanciunas tried to share the floor. The reason why the Kings didn't really go to that too often is it just gets clogged, right? And you almost have to play Sabonis on the outside because he's more of the three-point threat than Valanciunas is. You don't have to worry about that with Maxime Reynaud. But in this game, as the physicality ratcheted up, the Kings went further away from Maxime. It just speaks to he needs to work on that physicality. He needs to work on that strength. But I thought he was still fine. It wasn't like a horrible game by any means. It wasn't even a bad game for Maxime Reynaud. I just thought we learned a little bit about if the game is going this way, Maxime is taken out of it a little bit more. But getting back to the positives, I want to talk about Isaiah Stevens. I also want to talk about the Sacramento Kings being one of the best developmental organizations in the league. We'll discuss in just a second. This episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is also brought to you by Open Phone. If you're running a business, you know that every missed call is money left on the table. Think about the last time that you had an urgent need, say for like a plumber or a service provider. If the first person that you called didn't answer, did you wait for them to call you back? No, you moved on to find the next person to get that problem solved as quickly as possible. That's why you need OpenPhone for your business. OpenPhone is the #1 business phone system built to streamline and scale your customer communications, all from an app on your phone or on your computer. OpenPhone lets you manage business calls and text from a single app. The shared inbox feature is a game changer, meaning your team can jump into any conversation instantly without being behind or missing a beat. And their AI agent handles after-hour calls, answering common questions and captures leads, so you never miss a customer no matter what time of day it is. OpenPhone is offering our Locked On Kings listeners 20% off of your first 6 months at openphone.com/LockedOnNBA. That's openphone.com/LockedOnNBA. And if you have existing phone numbers with another provider, OpenPhone will port them over at no extra charge. OpenPhone, no missed calls, no missed customers. If you look at the history of the Sacramento Kings in the lottery and drafting talent in the lottery, it's not great, right? It's not just that the Kings have gotten a lot of picks wrong and picked players that, or didn't pick players that went on to become stars, like Dame Lillard, Steph Curry, CJ McCollum. That's just a few. It's more the amount of Kings draft picks, lottery picks, that didn't even make it to a second contract. That haunted the Kings organization for a very long time, for a majority of the playoff drought. So during that period, I don't think anybody would even remotely consider saying that the Sacramento Kings were a good team, and certainly not one of the best at developing talent. But since the implementation of the two-way contract in the NBA, which is now, I think, 5-6 years old, and last year it was the first year that it went to 3 two-way spots instead of 2 two-way spots, I would argue that there hasn't been a team in the league that has done better developing talent with their two-way spots than the Sacramento Kings. The amount of success stories from that two-way spot in Sacramento is incredible. From Keon Ellis being the most obvious one to Neemias Queta. While it didn't necessarily happen here in Sacramento, he went on to become a champion and a contributor for the Boston Celtics. Then we could talk about Isaac Jones having his contract converted to a full contract last year, right? The Kings have had a lot of success at that two-way spot. If you get a two-way roster spot in Sacramento, there's a very good chance that you will get NBA caliber opportunity. It's a realistic path to the NBA to someone who might not be there yet when they are drafted or when they first enter the league. Sacramento has proven that, I think, more than any other franchise. And they've hit home runs with those two-way contracts, right? And again, if you don't understand what a two-way contract is, essentially it allows the Kings to sign fringe NBA/G League players, give them these spots that are essentially developmental spots. They can jump between the G League and the NBA freely, but there is a cap with the two-way contract of how much the NBA club can use those players. They are allowed 50 games to suit up for the Sacramento Kings. They're allowed to be available for 50 games before their contracts need to be converted to a full contract. And if they want to play in the postseason in any form, whether it's the play-in or the actual playoffs, they have to be converted to main contracts. But that doesn't mean playing in 50 games. If you're suited up and available to play, meaning if you're one of the 13 or 14 or whatever it is, active players that the coach can go to at any time, that counts, even if the coach doesn't go to you. And that's what happens most of the time for these two-way players. But it allows for guys to essentially spend the entire season in practice, working with the main club, developing with the main club, getting spot minute opportunities, and hopefully they make the most out of them to where they can become stories like Keon and like Isaac Jones. There are important spots that the players who get them don't want to waste, and the organizations don't want to waste them either. And here are the Sacramento Kings, I think, once again, using their spots in a fantastic way. Isaiah Stevens has been really, really good. Had another really good game. 6 points, 2 of 4 shooting from three-point range, 6 rebounds, 7 assists, right? He split a lot of the point guard responsibilities with Devin Carter, helped alleviate some of that pressure of Devin Carter at that spot. Now, you could use that as an argument against Devin that he needed a a two-way guy to take some of that pressure off of him, and I understand that completely. But Isaiah Stevens had some phenomenal passes in this game, hit some really big threes for the Kings throughout the course of the game, got the start in place of Mason Jones, who made his return from injury, and Mason had, I think, 12 points or something like that off the bench, so it was good to have the G League Finals MVP back. But Isaiah Stevens looks really, really good. Of course, Colorado State teammate, or former Colorado State teammate of Nique Clifford, so that's fun. I'm looking forward to seeing Isaiah Stevens together, or as part of the Kings roster, and what that can be and what that can look like as a two-way guy over the course of this season. So now we turn our attention to tomorrow, 7 o'clock, prime time from Las Vegas Summer League, the final game of Las Vegas Summer League 2025. The Sacramento Kings will face, as of now, I think it's the Charlotte Hornets. The game is still going on while I'm recording this, and the Charlotte Hornets were up big last time I checked, so it looked like it's going to be Kings and Hornets. It'll be Kings and Hornets or Kings and Thunder, but most likely Kings and Hornets for the G League Championship. Again, the Kings going for their third Summer League Championship. The Kings going for their third Summer League title, which would be the most of any NBA team. And how cool would that be, winning the Summer League title on the backs of winning the G League Championship with the Stockton Kings? Just goes to show the developmental system in Sacramento is doing pretty well. We just got to get that success up to the main club and the Sacramento Kings, who have only made the actual playoffs one time in the last 18, almost 19 years. But baby steps. Who wants to win the NBA championship when you can be a 3-time Summer League champion? Looking forward to watching that game. Win or lose, I will have a breakdown for you just like this one on the Locked On Kings podcast, so I will see you then. My name is Matt George. You have been listening to the Locked On Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.